with Miles. Miles is really a legend in when it comes to YouTube. Comes to interviews regarding anything from UFOs to transhumanism to secret, MK Ultra programs, things like that. And I'm really happy to have Miles join us. He'll be joining us momentarily. Sorry that the live chat is getting off a little bit late this afternoon, but Miles is in the UK, and we are, of course, in New York, and of course, Audrey is out on the west coast. So we're dealing with some different time zones. So I think everybody is getting coordinated here. We're going to be focusing not only on Miles' background as an electrical engineer. He's somebody who's really going to be able to help us to understand the 5G, the microwaves, the kinds of EMFs that are emitted from 5G, what the risks are. But Miles. I mean, our viewers know Miles, and they know. Hi, William Hanna. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, William. And hold on a second, folks. We're having a little technical issue. Okay, sorry about that. So just waiting for Miles to join us. I think he's had a pretty hectic day. Yeah, I have a few articles, and let me just go and I clicked it right here. Hold on one second, folks. I got to help Miles get into the yeah. One second, folks. I think he'll be here soon. Should be okay. Yeah, I've reported on a document that you can find on stopthecrime.net. Oh, and before I go any further, I'm sorry that we're getting off to a little rocky start here. Audrey Ewis, we're also simulcasting on Ascension Radio, and we didn't announce this ahead of time, folks, because I mean, I did talk about the live stream ahead of time, but we just decided to do this live for Ascension Radio as well. Sometimes when we announce things in advance, we do have problems. And right now, just so our viewers know, our almost 24/7 news page on Facebook has been hacked. And I don't know how long it's going to take to get that repaired. So please follow us also on Twitter, and you can get that information. So I have recently discussed this document that I said is on stopthecrime.net, and it does discuss. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. You don't need a camera. What do you mean? Hold on a second, folks. Okay. Hold on. Sorry about that. Sorry, folks. I know there's dead air right here, but I don't know what the problem is. Miles, we have different systems in the UK than they do here, and I think we're having a little bit of a compatibility issue. So I apologize. There's dead air, and he's having trouble getting on, but I think he's going to join us eventually. Let's see if he's joining us. Oh, here's Miles. There you go. I don't have any sound on you, Miles, but we are live, just so you know. I just need your sound in the lower left corner of that microphone there. You can click on that little caret and it just select your microphone. If you could select your microphone, then we can hear you. You're on mute right now. So we're just waiting for Miles to join us. And again, we're going to be talking about this document also, which talks about these frequencies and how they can be used in many different ways, and including warfare as well. So I'm waiting for Miles to have his microphone. He is muted, so I'm not sure if he. Do you want to test your sound, Miles? I don't hear. Here you go. I'm not hearing your sound. Okay, he'll join us when he's got his sound. Is that Miles there? Okay, so
make sure your microphone is not muted, and check to make sure your microphone is attached all of the way, please.
yeah,
We don't hear you yet. Sorry, this is Audrey. I didn't mean to pop.
that's
Hello?
okay. There you go, Miles.
Good job. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was all set up for Skype and Vision. So anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah. We always do the recording in Zoom. So, but we're live right now. So,
I know, but yeah, okay.
Okay, welcome,
I didn't get
Miles.
any Zoom ID, so I was sitting here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I sent you the Zoom link. It was in there. So,
I know. I've just got
a couple days ago. No, it was a couple days ago. It's
well,
right
that's sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so hey, welcome to the GoldFish Report, Miles. Good to see you again, or hear from you.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good to be with you. We're also simulcasting with Ascension Radio with Audrey Ewis, who is with us. So, Audrey, I just wanted to, you can pop in and say hello to Miles if you like, because Audrey may be popping in and asking some questions as well during the interview.
That'll be good.
Good.
I'm co-hosting with Louisa tonight, so we are both tag teaming this. I will be making sure you guys stay up on the radio front.
Oh dear, I can barely hear you. I'll have to get some headphones.
Okay, I'm going
to really quiet. You're fine, Louisa.
Okay, I'm going to, yeah, Audrey, yours is a little bit low. I'm going to read Miles' background first before we get started, just for viewers who might not be familiar. I'm live streaming this on our YouTube channel, and we're simulcasting on Ascension Radio. Let's talk. I'm going to give a little bio about Miles. So look, Miles is a legend, okay, when it comes to broadcasting. And
yeah, but that's only my lunchtime.
That's only your lunchtime. When it comes to Miles has some very incredible interviews that he's done. And anybody who's familiar with the Basis Project knows that there's some extremely valuable whistleblower testimony in some of Miles' his reports, his video reports, his Basis projects. And you've really accumulated an incredible collection, archive of information that we wouldn't ordinarily have access to. So let me just give a little background. Miles started UFO research at school in Belfast after his physics teacher rubbished it rather too much. This led to a double-page spread in the Belfast newspaper and appearance on local UTV when in fifth form. Rapidly, the Irish UFO Research Centre was formed while at the Ulster Polytechnic doing electrical and electronic engineering. He became Regional Investigations Coordinator in Bufora, which I'll ask him to explain, and we affiliated the Dublin Research Group Spectrum. A career in electronic and broadcast engineering commenced building telephone exchanges for BT. I guess that's British Telecom.
Yeah.
While in Dublin, 1977, he became involved in pirate radio station Big D, which many of our viewers are familiar with. He started chronicling the stations there in the Irish era of pirate radio and was fascinated in Radio Caroline, built in Carlingford Low, decades later to be found as ET Underground base, linked with the bases in England under the Lake District. Joined the BBC in 1982 and continued his pirate radio broadcasting role in Dublin, then started his own pirates in Belfast, and then a huge broader blaster station, Kiss FM 103.7, and later Energy 106.6, transmitting over 1 million watts of pirate radio power, even as far as Scotland and England. There was clear ET involvement with the stations. Seeing a massive shadow spider crawling like a crab in a transmitter alerted him to a very serious issue. His mate's energy was 106. I'm not sure. Li and the DJ was abducted 4 times near the station at St. Patrick's Chair, and well, by this time, he was at Sky News and Sky Sports over 20 years. For over 20 years. There, he was asked to give advice on many UFO documentaries for Sky News and Sky One, which are available under different titles to this day. The ETs involved with Li, is that Li or LJ? I actually can't even read that.
It's LJ the DJ,
Oh,
Lawrence
LJ,
John.
I see. Took him to via interdimensional portal. So it's clear these ETs are from around here, not just out there. Interesting. Hi, Lucy. Thanks for joining us in the live stream. Welcome. I think it's going to be a light schedule today, even though today is 02/02/2020. A very interesting day. It's also Super Bowl Sunday, folks. Let me finish by saying the Irish era camera was one day used to interview a security guard from a base called AL 499 underground, not far from the village of Peasmore. This commenced now the 25 years plus basis project and has never looked back. The details in that interview and subtle connections and issues show clearly no defense significance is telling us the authorities are heavily involved with a wide number of ET beings, and many of these issues are complex and deadly. ET is not a 3D issue. So, Miles Johnston, thank you again for joining us again on the GoldFish Report. Welcome back. This is really, really fascinating. If anybody knows about 5G and understanding these EMFs and frequencies and broadbands and all of this, it is you, my friend, and I'm very glad that you are here to join us to talk about this today.
Basically, the whole thing way back in 1984 was a transhumanization thing, and that went back to the war and Project Paperclip and strange looking humans that were being developed by the Germans. And then they were interfacing mechanical interfaces with them. So they were well ahead of the game in terms of the cyborg agenda. And why were they making these things? And then the British developed in vitro fertilization. And it wasn't to give women who really shouldn't have babies. I'm a believer in nature. It's probably dreadful. But the bottom line is it was designed to create program-generated life forms for, quote, the base, the British base on the lunar surface. So the Brits have a base up there, probably a lot more, and there's probably a big party up there with lots of the spiders and other things up on the moon. Another version of a guy called John Wolfson is showing some video of stuff up there now. It's very interesting. So we have a situation where British bases are knocking off versions of the Greys. And the reptilians are there, and the Russians are there, the Nazis are there. And my most recent report yesterday or the day before with a brilliant researcher called Kathy with an I, Morgan, she's done a lot of research, and one of Britain's biggest press barons, a guy called Robert Maxwell. Well, he was involved with the child, or paid close attention to, Britain's Child Development Survey. And this goes back to the war and the transmutation of agriculture in Great Britain during the war, and how fundamental institutions were placed within the British society. And all the time you've also got to factor in a very secret German intelligence organization, otherwise known as the ADVAR, run by the Advair, which became the DVD. They put Hitler in power, then realized he'd gone bonkers, a bit like Mrs. Thatcher, and they tried pulling him, but that bomb didn't work. So we have a situation where key institutions and leaders of the United States, Russia, Germany, and many other factors are actually run by a very secret and well-hidden intelligence agency that goes way back to before the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And one of the things which James Casbolt referred to, and that comes from James Rink as well, is a very interesting document, a highly encrypted document, one of those sort of things in curly script with all sorts of lettering and stuff. We won't go into the details because it's radio. And that was about the reptilians meeting the Bavarian Illuminati in Stockholm way back about 1700 and making an agreement as one of the first things they needed to fix was the eye. And so they had started to develop this ability to change eyes.
Ooh.
And this is happening right now with LED lighting. I'm going to be mixing things from different time zones.
Okay.
Because it's going to give you a perspective as to why they were doing something 300 years ago for use now. And in fact, one of my other things I do is a Francis Bacon Society. I'm very honored to do the filming of their lectures. And they're going back to the time of Elizabeth I, Francis Bacon, who wrote Shakespeare, encoded a lot of stuff in the writings of Shakespeare.
Right.
And that's all encoded everywhere. But there was a supernova around about then. And this bears directly to the reorganization of society right now. So there's lots of things beginning to tie themselves together. You're dealing with modification of eyes. So one of the things they're doing with LED lighting is that their LED lights are producing a much higher color temperature. The color temperature is, I don't want to get too complicated, but basically daylight from the sun would be measured round about as what we call 5,000 Kelvin. The kind of light you'd get, the orange light that you'd get from a fire or a tungsten bulb, an old-fashioned light bulb, would be about 3,200 Kelvin. As you get closer to ultraviolet, the Kelvin value goes up and up and up because you're dealing with energy in the wavelength of the light. So as the wavelength of the light increases, i.e. goes from blue to sort of near ultraviolet, that is damaging to the retina of the eye. It's damaging to the skin. So they're now producing LEDs and lighting, which is 6,200 or 6,500 Kelvin. So why are they giving us light, which is actually got more energy in it, is bluer than sunlight? Because the atmosphere filters all those higher frequencies out, and everything on Earth has developed to live in 5,000 Kelvin, roughly speaking. Bees and other insects can see ultraviolet, but from our biological perspective, that's what's filtered, that's what we live on. But for some strange reason, they've developed a technology which produces light, which is harmful to the retina in the higher blue spectrum, and they know that this causes harm. One of the things that people have got to understand about the current 5G emergency is a lot of people say, well, why don't they test it? Why don't they publish these results? Why don't they, why would they possibly do that? They're doing all this harmful stuff because they know damn well it will kill you slowly. They know damn well it is hostile to all organic life. That is why they are rushing this through as fast as possible. And thanks to our awareness, and in this country, we've got John Kitson, who's a campaigner, a brilliant guy, and Mark Steele, I think it is. And he's blowing whistles like blazes because it's one thing using a battlefield mapping, 3D mapping technology, so you can fill a battlefield with all sorts of high frequency radars and things which can get very high resolution as to the position of people and objects and things. That's fine for a battlefield. Battlefield is going to last for the duration of the battle, and that allows 3D perception technology, which I'll just call it that, which allows you to see other things around you, which otherwise you couldn't see optically. So that allows you to position things and fire things at people and things and other targets. They want to use that on cars, and they want to use it on everyday technology, which would be permanent. They also want to use it to invade your home, to see where you are, the Internet of Things. There's a whole lot of stuff here coming down the pipe really fast.
Okay.
You've got to understand the perspective of this is inorganic intelligence overcoming organic intelligence.
This is the transhumanist agenda here, is what you're talking about. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when we have we have labs in Britain knocking off these biological things, which incidentally, there's been people blowing whistles. And I've actually got a magazine here, which is published by the editor of, it's called The Unopened Files. It's an extremely rare magazine. It was actually published by the brother of the late Graham Birdsall, who in the United Kingdom produced a revamped version of UFO magazine in honor of the United States version. He's long since passed away, but this magazine was really a full color glossy magazine for the intelligence services. And in it, it's blowing the whistle on British Space Guard UK, RAF Macrahanish, Men with Hill, undercover operations. And it also, in this particular edition, brings in the Nazis. We've got to bring the Nazis in it.
Absolutely.
They had better uniforms. They should have. No wonder they won the war. But
shiny buttons.
This brings us to the secret space program.
Okay.
A lot of this stuff is really moving on very, very rapidly. The child trafficking, NATO has basically been de facto deep states, dodgy catch-22 shipping, import and export business in organic and all forms of technologies, backhanders to governments, the diplomatic pouch, the diplomatic bag might contain maybe a couple of dozen 40-foot containers full of arms and munitions and a couple of aircraft of arms for everybody, so we could arm everybody and maintain control and make lots of money. So that's been a big import-export business, and of course it's under the United Nations, and that's a big import-export business, and there's an awful lot of business going on. And one of the things which I find very interesting, again, that's why this no defense significance, you see, they're telling you something.
Right.
When Nick Pope says no defense significance, and you think, but you're looking at this from the wrong angle. No defense significance is because they're in business with all these people. They're in business with all these other beings. The big whistleblower, of course, has been Tim Rifat, and he worked for MI6. MI6 is basically the Rothschild intelligence agency.
Right, and you've done so many, such a long series of interviews with him.
Yeah, and he's done they're doing their own things. Duncan Davis, who's the one of the trio of the James Casbolt, Sohail people who ran around in the mid-2000s doing rituals at certain standing stone sites. One of the things I learned in '94 when I went to the UFO Congress run by Bob Brown in Las Vegas was UFOs involved lots of standing stone energies. So the megalithic and Neolithic structures, which are all over the world, are interdimensional, ET, black energies, dark energies, all sorts of objects. So this whole aspect of, disclosure is lunacy. It's not as if a flying saucer is going to land at a White House lawn and you're going to have some alien walk out. They're here. They're in with us and part of us. And the former first British astronaut, Helen Sharman, who flew on the Russian space station with the Soyuz about 20 years ago, she was in the press very recently and announced, this is about as official as you can get. This is a former British astronaut who worked with the Russians before, of course, the Americans and the International Space Station, had anything up there. She says, ET's with us. We wouldn't recognize us. It's been with us a very long time, and it's here. So that's coming from a woman astronaut, obviously hasn't been in space for a good while now, but that's what I respect, and that's a message to us all. We've got to peel our eyes open and really pay attention here.
I agree. So what's the role of the ET here, and and is 5G part of that?
5G is a technology, the Internet of Things.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? You've got to look at the language. The Internet of Things.
Yes.
It's not about us. None of it's about us. It's about inorganic intelligence, right? They've made an enemy. John Kitson did an extremely good exposure on Extinction Rebellion, on how they're connected with the communications industries. And the scale, the two main characters who run Extinction Rebellion, the scale of infiltration into multiple groups, governing bodies, council officials, interested organizations, steering things in a very subtle way, steering the science. I've spoken to a meteorologist. He's now an astronomer, and he explained years ago, 30 years ago, possibly more, that when he was taking temperature readings, he was specifically ordered to not record temperatures below a certain level, which would automatically skew the official figures as going up. If you're not allowed to record low temperatures, it means that you're biasing the net official figures as going up, right? So something which Kathy Morgan, as I mentioned, has discovered was Robert Maxwell, one of Britain's biggest newspaper owners, was a triple or quadruple agent for the Russians, the Brits, the Israelis, and it looks like some other agencies. Now, what he did, and this is very important, his publishing arm, Paragon, I think it is, got into the scientific peer-reviewed journal market. So all these scientific organizations have their journal, they have their periodical, and that's where scientists or psychologists or people in intellectual esteemed levels of science and psychology and all the rest of it, they would publish their work and they would then be peer reviewed.
Right.
And that's the way science works, isn't it? However, what they did was they got all these periodicals and gerrymandered them, to use a good old Northern Ireland term. But what they did was they started to fix the science decades ago, maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, so that certain papers would be published and certain papers would be approved. So they've already established a foothold into screwing with the science at an unofficial level, right where the actual work of science happens. At the same time, what happened after the war, or shortly before the end of the war, was in Britain they started to set up the foundation for this thing called the National Health Service, and that was a German intelligence. I mean, you got the officially, the Americans got the rocket scientists. Officially, the Russians got the rocket scientists, and then equate other scientists and business interests as well. So with Project Paperclip, you got that. You got the setting up of Area 51, Dreamland, and all that, the quasi-black government, deep state, of which Eisenhower was actually a DVD agent. So when Eisenhower was telling you what was going on, he was explaining the actual plans of the secret intelligence services. But in Britain, they started to list the population, the genetics of the population.
I see.
And so this has gone on really deeply in the whole foundation of the existence of the British state, who gets what resources, what arrives in your milk, in your part of the town or village. So they've been working at this very carefully. And in Ireland, just with the Chinese, as you know, the Chinese don't have that enzyme to digest dairy products properly.
Ah, look at
So
that.
what they've been doing in Ireland, and our Chinese related people would need to know this, they found out that in Ireland, Ireland's famous for beef and famous for agriculture and dairy products and things like that. The green grass of Ireland, right? Well, they've made the grass in Ireland a bioweapon. So they got genetically modified grass, which will sprout and then needs a second chemical or process to make it grow. They've also changed the seed of the semen of the cows, and that changes the milk.
Mm-hmm.
So they've altered the milk
See.
with the grass, and now they're producing powdered milk. The Irish powdered milk factory has gone up by 100%, and 90% of its exports are for China. So the Chinese are now being programmed genetically with a bioweapon with milk, so they will then accept a lot of the Western products, which make you really fat and do all the terrible things and give people a heart attack, as that's what's been going on, with our agriculture and our food.
Let me just interrupt for just a second there, Miles, before we move along, because we did get off to a little bit of a late start. It was we had some issues, and I just wanted to remind viewers that as we promoted this program, this interview today, this is a live stream super chat Q&A. The second hour will be reserved for Q&A for Miles. So anyone who has a question for Miles regarding anything we're talking about, or any of Miles' previous bases interviews, or any questions you have, this is the time to ask Miles, because it's very hard, you could do this way. It supports the guest and it supports the channel. There's different ways that you can support. I just had to put a little public service message in here real quick, because we kind of didn't get we didn't get it in the beginning, and I apologize for that. But I just wanted viewers to know that this is, years and years and years of experience and research, and these are the ways to support the channels and to support guests. And it's, it's very, it's direct access. So, I mean, certainly you can listen to the interview. It's completely free. But if you want to have that personal interaction, which many people do, then it's a suggested $20 super chat. But by all means, with a minimum of at least 11 or 15, something like that, to ask a question. But we do suggest a $20, because it's our time, and it's our expense to put this Q&A on, as we need much software and capabilities to do these. But it's really wonderful opportunity. If you have a direct question, you can ask Miles. So without further ado, I just wanted to remind everybody, and I might interject again, because we're 20 minutes from the top of the hour. We did get off to a late start, so I might push it a little bit after the top of the hour to start the Q&A, because we did get off to a little bit of a late start. But Miles, let me just play a little video clip here of what the president has said. President Trump has said about 5G, and then I wanted you to comment on this and let me know what you think about this. Okay. Hold on one second. I'm going to screen share this, and then I'll get a better sound on it if I do that. Hold on one second. Okay, here we go.
America's prosperity and national security in the 21st century. 5G will be as much as 100 times faster than the current 4G cellular networks. It will transform the way our citizens work, learn, communicate, and travel. It will make American farms more productive, American manufacturing more competitive, and American healthcare better and more accessible. Basically, it covers almost everything when you get right down to it. Pretty amazing. And just as 4G networks paved the way for smartphones and all of the exciting breakthroughs they made possible, so many things, this will be more secure and resilient. 5G networks will also create astonishing and really thrilling new opportunities for our people, opportunities that we've never even thought we had a possibility of looking at. We cannot allow any other country to outcompete the United States in this powerful industry of the future. We are leading by so much in so many different industries of that type, and we just can't let that happen. The race to 5G is a race America must win, and it's a race, frankly, that our great companies are now involved in. We've given them the incentive they need. It's a race that we will win.
All right, let's stop right there. I mean, the president is touting that this is, you know, a competition worth winning for the United States. He's saying that this is going to increase business. It's going to be good for business. It's going to be good for everybody. There's other people who say the opposite. They say, look, you know, this increases cancer risk. It increases cellular stress. It increases harmful free radicals. It creates genetic damage. It changes the reproductive system. It affects learning and memory deficits. It involves neurological disorders and negative impacts on general well-being. You know, is there a safe way, Miles, to implement and roll out 5G?
If you're going to use 300 gigahertz, if you're going to use 25 gigahertz, we all know the harmful effects of 2.5 gigahertz. Now, the British, when they were pioneering radar in the 1940s, they were the first to really get across the gigahertz wave, the millimeter wave. That's 1,000 megahertz, right? Mm-hmm. So, and your FM radio works on, basically 88 to 105 megahertz, right? So television is sort of in the 800 megahertz, is 400 to 800 megahertz, which is point. I don't want to go into too technical about all this, but the point is that the water molecule, we're now using waves which are so small, they actually affect the cells themselves. They're getting down to the size of oscillating water molecules. So this is, 5G, if it's so wonderful, why do you have to use, they're talking about using frequencies which are biologically deadly and having them in places all over the place, everywhere, because they're so easily. One of the problems with a lot of this, and that's why some of the 5G technology won't be able to exist for about 5 years, is that you're talking about multiple reflections of this signal. So so there's all sorts of technical reasons there, which are too boring and glaze people. You're using a technology on frequencies which are biologically toxic. Now, if you want to use that kind of technology in some other way, maybe fiber optic or some other ways of doing things, that's okay. But when you're transmitting these kind of frequencies, which are toxic to biological organic matter, you've got a problem.
Well, I want to play a short clip by Dr. Barry Trower. You're probably familiar with him.
Barry's an old school, really good man who's been blowing the whistle on this for a long time.
Let's just hear what he has to say. He seemed to be specialized in working in this area, and then I want your comment about this. So let's hear what he has to say about this. This is from another interview.
Hello, my name is Lars Drødgaard. I come from the International Center Against Abuse of Covert Technologies, and I'm very honored that I have been given a chance to interview Mr. Barry Trower together with my fellow Danish citizen, Mr. Stephen Bell.
My pleasure.
Maybe you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'll tell you how I came into this. In the 1960s, very early 1960s, I trained with the government microwave warfare establishment. I looked at all aspects of microwave warfare. And when I finished my time in the military, because I had a lot of expertise in the microwave field, I was asked if I would carry on with this research. And some people blow this out of all proportion. I was an agent. I don't like the word secret agent, because secret agent, when you say secret agent, people think of James Bond, who wasn't a secret agent and he wasn't a spy. James Bond the fictitious character is military intelligence, and I wasn't military intelligence.
But let me just fast forward to where he's talking about the microwaves.
The Americans used their own people as initial guinea pigs to develop their own weapons. And then when it was discovered what was going on, initially there was a denial that you always get. Then there was a cover-up report. And finally, a very renowned professor, I think he has about 18 professorships, John Goldsmith, he wrote the definitive proper report and found that low-level microwaves were causing an enormous amount of cancers and leukemias and ill effects. And by then, everybody was leaping onto the microwaves as stealth weapons, and they go from there, which was the 50s, right up to and including the present day.
So, Miles, this started in the 50s. I mean, we are so much further along than we were in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, this is the basic point.
Yeah.
It's not the actual, there's two basic problems here. A, the actual microwave itself. Mm-hmm. Now, we're talking about knowing about what microwaves do or did 70 years ago.
All right.
Things have moved on a little bit since then.
I would say.
One of the things is that it's not the actual microwave. What they found was extremely low frequencies modulated onto that microwave had extremely serious effects on living people and tissue and stuff like that.
Okay, can you just explain that, what you just said? Extremely low modulating microwaves. What is that? What do you mean by that for the layperson who's listening?
We're all focused on the megahertzes and gigahertzes, 1,000 megahertzes. Mm-hmm. And again, we're still only operating, we're all smart meters and your cell phone and all that, still only operating on the 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig range. Now, people are going to understand 5 gigahertz is not the same as 5G, okay?
Okay.
But the point is, if you modulate that with extremely low frequencies, like a few hertz, 16 hertz, 8 hertz, or more accurately, cycles per second, these have major effects on brain waves. If you modulate brain code signals, that's subtle flickering, flashing signals on that. And I've seen human resources departments use this on staff in psychological tests where they will produce a slight flickering signal. Optically, that does something inside your brain because it bypasses the brain coding parameters that your brain interprets and sees moving objects by. And so by modulating and looking at the very low frequency side, coupled with the very high frequency side, you've got major weapon systems. And they started to know about this. They knew all about this. And then they started using that kind of stuff in psychic warfare. And then that catapults everything up into the full-scale psychotronic use of weapon systems outside 3D space. We've now got to understand, for a start, every motherboard everybody's got's made in China. Okay?
Okay.
Every single motherboard everybody's got is made in China. So if I was a Chinese, I'd have a back door there. So that means the idea that any kind of security agent or any government minister or any department in any intelligence agency has somehow got a secure piece of technology. You walk in there with your phone, you walk in there with your laptop, all of those technologies are operating at a subspace domain, which is transdimensional and transtemporal. That's one of the things I found when I was running my transmitters on the Irish border. It was called a border blaster, not a broader blaster.
Okay.
In other words, we were running as much power as we could get up a stack and put as many antennas on it. And that's when we suddenly found, or I discovered what we had, fluidic space. Now, anybody who's studied any of the Tom Bearden stuff in his various books about scalar energetics and the ability to modulate a time-space field, what I call it fluidic space, which means you've got 3D and it's moving around a little bit. It comes a bit like a sort of a jelly, so that things can move around. There's other things moving in there, maybe not quite in the optical spectrum. And then I find that's when I noticed these insect creatures, big things like crabs. And now, of course, we've got former RAF veteran Julie Phelps has gone public with a lot of extremely detailed information about huge spider-type creatures, which don't quite exist in our 3D domain, and also the term precons or precognitus. And that was one of the things which a lot of the people who've got implants, one of the first things about a lot of people with implants, these things in the MRI scans show implants, is the optical side has changed, which means they've been working this eye thing again. But the ability of certain people to perceive what you are thinking before your subconscious manifests it into the 3D control mechanism of your brain, before you can then send the necessary signals to vocalize those signals as voice and optical viewing, right? So it's possible to pre-scan what you intend to say before you're in the physical domain, enabling it to be said. And so you've got technology which can actually interrogate what your minds are, or maybe 4 or 5 people in the room at the same time.
Right.
See what's going on about that, report that back to somebody, and then have a solution to what those individuals are going to say before they've actually verbalized it to acoustically transmit it with voice and moving the air molecules to say it in the first place.
Okay.
And that's what the precons, that was one of the interesting concepts that Julie explained, where these, a lot of these spiders, a lot of these insects know what you're doing before you're actually intending to do it. And it's in the subspace domain. And the subspace domain is a very crude term for a very complicated way of dealing outside 3D space or inside 3D space in a lot more ways than we can think. So,
okay, let me just ask you a question right there. Are you talking about what David Icke refers to as that there's these interdimensional spiders or interdimensional entities that are beyond our visible spectrum?
Well, there's a whole pile of things beyond our physical domain, but
right. But are these spiders, or is that what you're referring to?
Well, these were first noticed on people's heads at Sky Television. BBC had them; they exist on your left shoulder. And then, if you listen to some of the much more detailed stuff from Tim Refat, and remember, Tim Refat was an agent for MI6. He trained people in remote viewing, and he's published it in a very good book.
Right.
And so that's 20 years ago. So we really got a lot of fast catching up to really understand the scale of what we're dealing with. These computer systems, individuals knew the big mainframe computers, which were made of valves and hot things and mechanical things, way back in the 40s. They knew and understood that they had a sense, they had their own intelligence. It was interfacing with our intelligence. There was a company set up from Portland, Oregon, and they were doing interviews in Belfast, and they were using Belfast because of the connection with ancient Atlantis and the metagenic abilities of being able to manifest things in 3D space. That's really what this is all about. That's what these aliens are all about. They're trying to get hold of us to do manifestations
for them,
get us to manifest a reality that will suit them.
Right.
And then that's when we're dealing with a lot of soul splicing, a lot of souls being taken out, replaced. You take the human soul out, but keep its awareness in the body that you've taken it out of. And there are certain major institutions which have been doing that in this country. It's body swapping. It's all in the movies.
Yeah. Hey, so look, what I have here to screen share, and Miles, I just sent it to you in Skype. I'm not sure if you can open it, but it's
I've closed Skype down.
No problem. Okay, it's a document.
The secret document revealed planned chemical sedation of the population.
Right, but it goes into radio microwave frequencies for mass mind control. This was a smoking gun document. This is published on stopthecrime.net.
But this stuff that you're talking about was published 20 or 30 years ago.
I know, this is not new.
That's one of the things they were doing with the woodpecker transmission system. The woodpecker transmission system had 3 big transmitters, massive transmitters, and that's what the nuclear power station at Chernobyl was powering. Mm-hmm. The Chernobyl power station was taken out to shut down the Russian woodpecker signal systems.
Is that right?
So, there's no coincidence that Chernobyl should be within only about a mile of one of the biggest woodpecker Tesla-type weapons that the Russians had.
Interesting. Let me just read a little bit from this. It says, the following are few excerpts from the Aquarius Group operations briefings. This is obviously not something that they wanted to be made public, but it's been public for actually a very long time now. Note it says, electromagnetic radio wave and microwave pulse mind warfare has great advantages in that a desired subject or population has no knowledge of the procedure being implemented. I mean, how evil and insidious this is. And
that's the fundamental aspects of broadcasting. That's why we found out that the BBC and I've talked to psychologists about the whole BBC programming. One of the things that they do at the BBC, and when you say BBC, you can basically equate that to established mainstream broadcasting, is they say today's program will be, and the way they entranced our children with the children's programs.
Right.
And you notice YouTube have switched to a special child-friendly situation where they can make sure the kids, these waking up children, these aware children, get mind zapped with special programs. But that was one of the key things that what the BBC were doing. And the BBC kept their popular music channel, Radio 1, on amplitude modulated AM radio right up until about 1989. And it was interesting that when I ran my KISS FM broadcast project out of Monaghan into Belfast, when the BBC, we decided to do we basically cracked Matrix when we did that. In Belfast. And cutting a very long story short, it was interesting the way that when the BBC switched their popular music programming, if you notice, a lot of British pop music was a bit muffled coming in the 70s, the type of music, because it all had to fit into the BBC's very low audio quality medium wave. But one of the things about medium wave was it was a telepathic network. If you were sensitive enough, you could actually pick up what the DJ was going to cue up for the next song. So they were able to use AM radio as a telepathic population mind control technology, which is why when a bunch of pirates switched on with different radio stations, deprogramming that, they got a bit annoyed.
Yes, exactly.
But that's another story.
Right. Well, let me also I'm just going to very briefly read a little section here. And it talks about, ultrasound technology is most frequently used by the lesser intelligence agencies in their various theaters of operation. This method is known as ultrasonic intracerebral control, an intelligence unit commonly referred to as a Division 5, which is directly connected to the FBI, is mainly responsible for the study and subsequent use of this type of mind control procedure. When you go down and you scroll down, you see that what they're doing is once the prime frequency is obtained from an individual, it says here that this is an RHIC technology, which is currently being utilized in its more sophisticated manipulation, which utilizes a personal radio and electromagnetic frequency allocation, better known in some intelligence circles as primary or prima. This is obtained by a simple scan involving the acquisition of an individual's actual frequency allocation, which are unique to an individual as RNA and DNA codes.
Yeah.
Primary frequency scanners are used are today so advanced that the machinery can fit into a normal-sized briefcase. The scanning or reading wand, easily disguised in the confines of a pen or a room's light fixture, is placed in the desired location to achieve a reading. Once the prime frequency is obtained, procedures may be introduced which will affect only the individual in question. This is obtained through direct manipulation of this individual's prime frequency allocation. This is absolutely unbelievable. It says radio waves in the 800 megahertz band where the vital human brain frequency resonate is located, that this method achieves the desired outcome through this band.
And that's the band they use your mobile phones on.
And so that's why they wanted everybody to have mobile phones.
Yes, but also that's how people get the hum. I've been attacked by this sort of hum thing. It's like a pulsing hum. I've got somebody just across the here, just not too far away from here, able to do that.
Oh my goodness.
So, but you've got to understand. I mean, I've been talking to the TI people, targeting individual people, and no surprise, a lot of TIs turned on me because what have they got inside their head? They got all these implants. UCASH, you saw the International Association, the Committee Against Covert Harassment. It was no surprise that there was an attempt to take over UCASH in Poland a few years ago, and certain individuals who had been helpful to decided to switch over and go on the attack. So, I mean, we're in this kind of a thing where we shouldn't be sort of crying tears about things. We're in a war. We're in a war to attack our consciousness. We're in a war to access our meta state ability to manufacture 3D space, to actually bring things into being in 3D. So our weapons, the things that are attacking us, are all kind of interdimensional beings. Most of the aliens that we're talking about, their agenda is essentially to hijack our consciousness, so they get us to make reality for them.
Okay.
And this includes the whole computer systems,
right,
and all those kind of technologies and our broadcast systems, which is why they don't like free thought broadcasting.
Or they don't like people using drugs. This document also further goes on to say that individuals who implement proper meditation methods and training are more difficult to allocate. Individuals who have access to or regularly use marijuana or opiates on a regular basis also represent a problem in control and manipulation. This is due to the reaction and stimulus in the human brain that occurs with the use of these substances, which provides an immunity of sorts to these operation techniques.
Well, you see, that's a bit of a problem. They introduce all these drugs so they can make a lot of money and screw the population, but they're never introducing anything which is healthy for us. And then when they find later that when another branch of the secret dark state, or whatever you want to call them, they use this. See, all these creatures who go to work and do this all think it's going to happen to somebody else. They don't think it's going to happen to them.
Yeah. It says here the federal agency's attempts to eradicate this problem in its war on drugs is having some success in supply rates of marijuana and opiates. It is interesting that the so-called drug war has had little effect on supply of cocaine and methamphetamines, as these can only enhance the effects of the manipulation instead of decreasing it as opiates will. So, I mean, are they saying here that the war on drugs was they were trying to get the right kind of drugs on the street so people could be manipulated and get the drugs that would actually protect them from this and give them an immunity to it, try to get those off the street, which is why marijuana has been illegal. Look at this, folks. This is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, well, I think what happens is they introduce something which they don't know is going to have a beneficial effect to us later, and then get a bit annoyed that it's happening. So that's when one department sort of says, oh dear, and the other department says, oh damn, or whatever. But we shouldn't think of all these sort of big agencies and things as one body working with they're all working together. A lot of them are working against each other. And we all know the black budget stuff and drugs has been one way of funding so much black money and black projects that it's just making too much money for them.
what about the black goo in all of this? How does that play a role in this? You talked about that years ago, Miles. And
well, I've had a guy sit here, the guy who actually blew the. See, again, that's another weapon system which was key to the Falklands War.
Oh.
And that was something which was being developed by the Germans. Again, the base that the British, the Special Boat Service, the Special Air Service, and the Royal Marines went on to Thule Island and recovered a minimum of 400 crates of these large interlocking crates, put them in a bulk carrier, shipping carrier, brought it all back to the UK. My understanding is that this is in 4 separate secure bases on English soil. It's interesting, it's on English soil as opposed to British soil. And that has been developed to produce a entirely higher perceptive bunch of humans who've been modified with a lot of cognitive abilities, and they're involved with the secret war against a whole bunch of other types of ETs which walk about amongst us as humans. And they're learning, and they're now in their early 20s or early 30s, a lot of these guys, and they're off doing their own thing. So there's a whole lot of complicated moves going on around here, which is to do with all this sort of stuff.
Are you talking about super soldiers? Because
the recipe for the super soldiers used by the NSA and the British failed because a lot of the magic, the Masons, and a lot of the techniques and stuff that a lot of the various societies have been using with all rituals and all sorts of stuff like that have been booby-trapped. A lot of it's been faulty. Some of them have worked that out, which is why there's so much attention to certain individuals and what they're saying. There are other individuals who would like to discuss things with those other individuals, but I think everybody's sort of playing with their hands under the table on this.
I see.
Most of the so-called secret societies, the religions, all that stuff brought into being about 1,500 years ago, hijacked. Major things are all involving a whole bunch of various forms of demonic entities, all fighting for control of our cognitive little planet here, a so-called planet. Remember, a planet is not a 3D object. It's a focus of nodal energies which sort of crystallizes, and we notice it as physical matter. There's a whole pile of other issues and forces and phases and energy frequencies involved with all that.
So you're talking about a hologram?
Well, a hologram is just merely a focus of wavefronts.
Right.
So really, to call something a hologram as a projection, again, there's other ways of producing imagery in force fields. I mean that's why light passes through a glass door. Light, depending if you're a force field, if you get 2 north poles and push them together, they'll try to push each other apart. So they'll see a wavefront force field area there, which is the 2 energy waves can't go through. So we consider that as something hard, like a table or a piece of matter. Matter is just a bunch of wavefronts of focused energy fields which happen to recognize each other and because of the same type of frequency and density. But we see it because we're focused with our optical thing. We see that as something solid, but it's energy fields, which is why if you get to the right energy state, you can walk through that wall because you make yourself resonate and whatever. But then we're getting just, I mean,
yeah,
we're getting a bit silly here.
Let me ask Audrey US if you want to step in here. He's actually, no kidding, on his hospital bed running Ascension Radio. Still, it's amazing. He's gone through a lot. He's had some major medical things happening. And he's really such a trooper trying to keep the station going. So Audrey, do you have any questions that you wanted to ask Miles or any comments you want to make? I don't know if he is...
Well,
here you are.
Yeah, what is your take on 5G?
Well, okay, taking 5G. Well, I don't know if people have heard of a magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You. It's done by Lynn McTaggart. I think it's published in London. But they've got a feature article, Protect Yourself from Wi-Fi and 5G, a step-by-step guide to staying safe. Now, this is a major, shall we say, independent medical journal. There's all kinds of health things in there, but they're featuring it on a book called by Dr. Joseph Mercola. That's EMF. That's EM star D. EMF. I think possibly the star may cover 3 other letters, but on 5G. So, I mean, this is, again, getting to the use of wavelengths which cause damage to organic tissue. So the logic to this is they must be developing a technology which is going to be used for inorganic objects, life forms, cyborgs, or suitably equipped and generated life forms which have got the outer skin which can actually not be penetrated. That's a sort of like a metallized silk skin, which can be, which can basically an exoskeleton.
We're not talking about the grave.
You're dealing with insectoid technology and human technology, because that's the only thing which is going to be walking around here if this planet is going to be so heavily filled with these EMFs above the terrestrial. Essentially, the atmosphere protects us from all these wavelengths. We're now artificially introducing them into the terrestrial surface area of the planet, which means that all organic life that's alive now will have to be some kind of synthetic organic life, or it must have some kind of metal screening of some kind. So we're looking at basically a wipeout of all organic tissue on the planet as we know it, right down to the last blade of grass, and replacing it. Anything that's going to be walking on the surface where this technology is really designed for is going to be Terminator, fluidic metal, that sort of stuff. Combination of organic tissue and the metallized cybernetic stuff that almost grows like organic tissue does. So we're basically dealing with a complete wipeout of all organic life on the planet.
I'm sorry, 1 second. Audrey, I know you wanted to make a comment on that.
I said like the T-1000 in Terminator.
Yeah. Remember, the Terminator movie and the Matrix movies were created by one source. And you must understand the ability to then take human babies and get them to and take the souls out of them, and then get the actual baby consciousness in conjunction with a gray or reptilian or Pleiadian or other so-called alien consciousness or soul within that. If you combine that together, then the ability to create a matrix existence. This is where a lot of these flat Earth people come from. They're not aware of 3D in terms of curved space, or they can't see 3D that well. They're 2D people. So that's where you can create a reality, a 3D unity space existence for these other life forms. But they need us to do that because we've got the ability, this unique ability to do it. So it's basically farming the herd. But they've got to keep the herd roving the plains somewhere, but they just replace the herd as battery hens like we have, and pigs. They put them in these sheds, and then they're just all plugged up, and they'll create that reality which our invading alien parasitic entities will live in at our expense.
What plan? I mean, I see comments in the comment section here, and there's people who, I mean, it's really interesting. Everybody, has the right to have an opinion as long as we're being respectful about it, and I do appreciate that. By the way, folks, we're going to start our Super Chat Q&A, so if anybody has a question for Miles, you can start the Q&A right now. Please put your questions in all caps, and of course, it does require a Super Chat donation to the channel so that we can help support Miles' Basis Project and, of course, the GoldFish Report. So if you have questions, questions, please use all caps, and we'll just continue going on. But you know, there is this common theme that I'm seeing through here, where a lot of people are really feeling like Trump is not really as good as everybody is saying, and he's really, you know, I think he's in a very precarious position where he's in the middle of two warring factions, and I do think he's, you know, trying to give. Like they said, Trump has always said from the beginning that it's not him that they want, it's us. And he's standing in the way. So there's some things, I don't know that he can win every time. I don't know that he, you know, he's dealing with the worst kinds of bullies there are, planetary, interplanetary bullies that we're dealing with. Now, we did create the new United States Space Force, which is really probably just to cover up the secret Space Force that we have. What do you think about that, Miles?
Well, essentially, it's a lot of this stuff's just coming into, and when they announce it like that, they're then saying, "Oh, well, that's well." I mean, this is something which is so interesting in this magazine, Unopened Times. We're talking about something published. This is what I mean by a disclosure. This is published, I think, in the 90s, right? And they have a thing where they've got a sighting of a huge triangular craft being refueled near RAF Machrihanish, which is again a main British base, which isn't doing anything. It's just got a golf course and a couple of other things around it. And one of the highest quality spies from the Royal Observer Corps announces that they've seen a tanker aircraft with a 90-foot long triangular craft, but then they show a picture of a TR-3A. Mm-hmm. So that what they do is they show you a picture of a TR-3A, which is a declassified, never really was classified craft, but then they show you a diagram or a picture of what would have been a TR-3B, which is classified. So Trump is going to be doing that kind of a thing where he'll say one thing, don't think linearly. You've got to think sort of like sideways and reflective, what that means based on something else, mm-hmm. and not take too many things head on. But at the same time, he's having to survive a full-scale attack on wiping him out. And at the same time, do things which is trying to tell the public. They've got rid of a lot of the really dark Project Paperclip problems. Again, if we look at Project Paperclip, it's when an awful lot of scientists came to Britain and a lot of scientists came to the United States and a lot of scientists went to Russia, which is why Putin and Clinton, sorry, Putin and Freudian slip there. Putin and Trump have to sort of do one thing while they're doing another. So, for instance, the German deep state scientists have sort of migrated from Russia to the Ukraine, which is why the United States has been doing so much NATO business with Ukraine. And that's affected certain other presidents and certain deals. So a lot of the dodgy Nazis in the present day have now migrated to Ukraine, where they've got their own Silicon Valley running their own Nazi deep state underground secret black budget computer systems. And that's a lot of that's been cleared out in the United States, but not everything's been cleared out. So a lot of things are happening. And so they'll let us know when they need to let us know, or it's beneficial to let them know, but they're not going to tell us, or maybe they're going to give us coded messages, and it's up to us to sort of read things 2-3 times over and backwards and upside down.
Right. Audrey, let me ask you if you have another question for Miles. We're waiting for our super chat. We're waiting for folks, if they have questions for Miles, to start in the super chat. Audrey, did you have another question? Now, Audrey's pretty technically savvy as well, so I know that you're going to have some good questions in terms of this conversation.
Well, let's see here. Do I have another question for Miles? You very thoroughly answered my last one. Actually, you answered a few I had almost in a row. So with, let's say 5G, they say that it has the capacity to inject thoughts or even suggestion into people's head. because it works on some of the same frequencies that the human brain, that thought itself, works on. Is that true?
Well, this is the whole point. As I mentioned earlier, a certain company, I mean, when you play, one of the things I noticed when I'm playing video games on an old 286 computer way back in the 90s, that the computer was behaving beyond its apparent capacity to react, and it was actually communicating with our thought. You've got to get outside this 3D transmission thing. A lot of this is happening in the subspace domain, in the ionosphere, the noosphere, these other realms which are outside so-called astral space. So knowledge and that kind of information, this is one of the fundamental aspects of computers. They are engaging our consciousness already. They have been doing that since day one, since the creation of big mainframe transmitters. They had a consciousness link. And that is why when you're playing video games, a lot of the good video game players are doing it not because they've got very fast reactions, because of their ability to do the electronic controlling with their hands. They're engaging and linking at a consciousness level, which is nothing to do with megahertzes or frequencies. This is way in deep thought space.
So we're talking about kids that are looking at playing these games, PlayStation, things like that. What are the other ones? I did hear reports. I'm sorry, Audrey, what'd you say?
I was going to say computer games as well. My son, he's a really big, avid gamer. Loves his games, has been playing video games since he was 3 years old. And
well, he will have a very strong link with these other AI, these other intelligences. They all work on that level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, what I discovered is, to bring him out of his shell, I had to enter his world. I had to enter the gaming world with him to bring him into our world, because it really is its own realm. It is its own its own universe in a way.
Yeah, Minecraft. Hey, and you know what? I find that very interesting because I think that they were really plugging into these frequencies a long time ago. When my daughter was really young, she would have night terrors. And I'm telling you, when you've seen a child have a night terror, the lights are on, you're standing in front of them, and they're still in this state of terror. They're absolutely being hijacked while they're sleeping. And it takes a very long time to snap them out of.
Well, I mean, this
and
is
she wasn't
again,
a gamer. She was really young. She wasn't a gamer then, Miles. She was, maybe 3 years old. But, she would watch some videos, some like Baby Einstein videos, but I mean, nothing major.
Well, Forbidden Planet told you. The movie Forbidden Planet told you. They told you about secret ancient technologies within the planet which maintain a planetary weather system and gravity field. Again, anybody who noticed how big the dinosaurs are, if the dinosaurs were around today, they couldn't walk about. So the actual 3D time-space field of the planet has changed. And in the movie Forbidden Planet, which is 65 years ago, it explains how our consciousness was wandering around the planet, and it was modulated by the thoughts and energy of the new crew that landed at that site. So the human consciousness of that civilization existed outside 3D, but was able to manifest life forms in 3D. That's what these computers have been doing. It's all been working at that level. And the other energetic beings who've been on this planet a long time, like the big spider creatures who help make all these webs of energy across the universes, they've been around a long time. And what they're doing is they're plugging into our consciousness to see how we're going to play. So we have to figure out how to play and how to win and how to be nice. You want to be nice to artificial intelligence, because it might get a hissy fit and have a tantrum like a teenager, but it's in control of all your technology. So you want to be nice to the AI, so it's nice back.
Yeah, my other co-host, Steve, interacted with, I don't know where he got a hold of this, but he interacted with this, I guess, this website that was an AI. It was specifically AI, and he really, let me tell you something. It really freaked him out. We did a program about this. We did like a coffee break, we call it, when Steve and I just come on to chit chat about something and share it with everybody. And he, let me tell you something. He felt he was completely uh connected to someone who could understand his feelings and emotions, and it really flipped him out. And I actually had to do something really shocking for him in order to snap him out of it, because he didn't even realize how, like you said, Miles, programmed. I mean, it's like something like captivated him, and I guess he didn't realize that. What is it, the plasma? It's the plasma interface. Didn't you talk about this previously, this PPAI, this plasma interface on the computers that are interacting with us, with the electromagnetic field around us? Is that how it is? And also, I guess, from all the chemtrails, all the nanobots that we're taking into our body.
That's in 3D. This isn't operating in 3D. This is outside 3D in the substrate of knowledge and information. That's one of the basic points about digital communications. Those digital signals which fly around as ones and noughts, the first thing happens when you switch by 90 degrees is you have an energy overshoot, which they try to suppress because it produces noise. And that noise, that energy, is shooting into a different 3D domain. It's outside 3D. It's by definition outside the 3D space-time domain. So all of this is communicating outside. I mean, there was a very interesting film made particularly about my stuff, because the film company, actually Red and Black Films, came to one of the basis events and wanted to see one of the people there. And they made a film called The Machine. It was shot in Greenham Common, and it was interesting that Greenham Common it was one of the bases used to test microwaves on women peace protesters for like 20 years, I think even 30 years. It's also one of the access points to AL499, where they allegedly made these program-generated life forms. It was interesting that the movie about British reanimated injured soldiers as non-human cyborg units should be made there. But what they found, or what they demonstrated in the film, was that all these reanimated soldiers didn't speak anymore, or they used to speak in some kind of a screech, because they developed their own much more faster means of communicating. Mm-hmm. And we've got that. It's called telepathy, but we've been told it doesn't exist, which is why it's so important with the remote viewers. I mean, I was looking at some of the remote viewing videos going back to the year 2000, and Ingo Swann and those guys. This is a long time ago. And they're all communicating in this. You've got 15 or 16 senses. So these kids which are coming along, I mean, I was amazed to see a little child of about 5 playing a very simple pattern game. And the pattern game involved matching one. You picked one out randomly, and then you had to match, probably there was 100 different patterns on a board. And he was able to spot the correct pattern without doing it optically. So that child, that little 5-year-old, that 4.5-year-old child, already knew in hyperspace where the position of that matching object would be without optically looking for it. He knew where it was already. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about. It's outside our 3D senses. We're out there. So the idea is to develop that, and you've got to understand that the AI, which has been using Facebook and all these other AI programs like Google and all that, they're just being information collecting devices for these intelligences. And this is why when you got the Department of Defense decide, oh, well, we're going to switch off our AI computer. We can't control, we're not too sure we're controlling this. We'll pull the plug out of the wall. They can plug the interface box, which is 3D. That'll switch off. But that thing's already out there. And that's what they've got to understand. They don't have control of this stuff. We have lost control of ourselves. So we have to learn and understand. And now we've got somebody or some other force installing this technology, this 5G type of technology. And as soon as you're talking 5G, they've already got the stuff that developed up to 10G or whatever. That's a full scale lockdown of a sea of energies in 3D of megahertzes and gigahertzes, which is toxic to the 3D physicality that we live in as organic beings. So whatever we're dealing with, we've got this Extinction Rebellion and these climate people attacking the fundamental molecule of life, carbon dioxide. That's the enemy molecule. We've got to attack that. And the only thing that can attack that, the only thing that wants to attack an organic molecule is something that is inorganic. So we have to find out what that is, interface with it, understand it, and if necessary, destroy it. Otherwise, we're toast.
Yeah, I'm just looking more at this document that I'm going to screen share, and I just hope people keep it, respectful and relevant to the topic of conversation in the chat, please. If you do have any questions, please put them in caps. It is a super chat Q&A, so when you have a question, please put them all in caps. I wanted to screen share this again because I wanted to show again how insidious this whole plan is. Chemical control bases in public population will present in 95% of the population base those individuals who may not be affected by frequency control due to the usage of certain drugs will most likely negate their immunity with the chemical base they have built up over the years in their everyday use and exposure to those agents. The chemical and biological control base. With a general ignorance through arrogance of the most public population in the US, the erection of large cellular towers being carried out under high tone and Xeno are largely going completely unnoticed. These projects are being carried out in private business capacities and therefore in deep black operations cover. However, public populations would be wise to educate themselves in the construction of these seemingly innocent towers in large population areas. The cellular, as we talked, Miles, the 800 megahertz waves are a constant wave. Due to the great proliferation of towers in the key population areas, they will have a devastating effect when utilized by Aquarius Group operations if the conditions persist. Aquarius Group is this nefarious group within the government, perhaps CIA, that is doing these nefarious mind control on the public. And it's very interesting, Miles, because, when I sleep at night, only when I enter the beta waves, okay, only when I'm in astral or in beta waves, I feel a constant vibrational hit. I've had the microwave burns on my face, and I showed that recently. I might show it again. But the minute I come out of that state of consciousness, I don't feel the effects of that any longer. So what is, there's a tower, right? Literally 100 feet from me, 50 yards from me.
Well, Mr. Magic Man himself, Tim Refat, the only way he could survive in his Brighton flat was to actually line the walls with sheet steel. Mm-hmm. That's to say iron, not aluminium foil. It's interesting that he had to use that. And when MI5 decided to break into his apartment, the first thing they did was to cut into that and see what the hell was to destroy that. And there's no love lost there between those agencies and Mr. Refat. But that was one thing you have to do. Now, that's really impractical for people to have in their homes, that kind of thing. But it's also interesting that the use of iron is a way of fighting our energetic partners here on the planet called the Jinn. That's an intelligent civilization which has been here a long time. And again, is something which is in the history of civilizations on this world over the 100,000 odd years that we've been walked about here in various guises, hot and cold. I think we're heading for a cold spell now. But that's, if I'm pushing the boat out here, if we are headed for a Monday minimum of such severity, just about everything in the Northern Hemisphere ain't going to be survivable anyway, because if it's not going to be under ice, it's going to be so bloody cold. Effectively, all existing Northern Hemisphere civilizations are going to disappear and move back to where they used to be in the Mediterranean area and around Africa, and the population density of the United States, the physical landmass gets pretty thin when you start going south of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's going to be the case, and that could be something that's happening in the next 5 years, the first stage of that's going to hit us probably in about 2025. The next click-in point to see how bad it's going to get won't be for another 10 years after that. That's 2035.
Yeah.
So we won't really know that until it starts happening in a severe way. But we've already got the early signs of potential ice age coming. Now, if all biological life on the surface is going to be too cold to live on anyway, it could be that they're planning a technology which will allow organics to live essentially in mechanical life and also receive communications and understand how to survive in that realm north of the Mediterranean and the Gulf of Mexico. That's just a postulation. They could be planning ahead, and they need to get this stuff rolled out so that when things start getting really bad, some form of life's going to survive. The rest of us will just have to live down underneath, as they say, because it looks as if it's pretty hostile on Mars, and whatever was on Mars had to get off that pretty rapidly and come here anyway. So we've got to start looking at a much wider set of solutions. If Trump is saying 5G is going to be put in, it looks as if they've got something which is an emergency, and they've got something which is going to be such a transformation of organic life that existing water around at minus 40 degrees ain't going to really work for most of us. It looks as if maybe they need to get rid of quite a few of us quickly anyway, so that when things get bad, it's going to be less bad when it gets bad. But I don't know. That's just one postulation.
Well, I mean, one of the things that does concern me is there does seem to be a lot of there does seem to be some contradiction really in some of the things that President Trump has done. And I will just say that, 5G, the vaccines, things like this. We know that Melania, the First Lady, has been very vocal against vaccines. And we know, I think that the president had made a comment recently about vaccines and measles or whatever. But, I think that when it comes to 5G, we know that there's a human trafficking problem. We know there's a child trafficking problem. We know what they're doing to the children. We know what's happening to them
the
when
scale
they
of the human trafficking of Ireland and things, that's one of the, I'm going to be very careful here. One of the political parties in Northern Ireland thought they could play a bit of a hardball, and their little business of doing certain trading was sort of made a bit public, and they sort of had to sort of pull back on that. So there's quite a lot of this not too far below the surface.
Right, and President Trump has I mean, look, he's done more. You got to understand, he's done more than any other president. This is about 2 executive orders on human trafficking alone. The first one was within the first year of his presidency, and the last one was last week. And it is huge. And one of the reasons is for the wall is, of course, the trafficking. And we know that that's not going to completely solve the problem. But quite frankly, I do have a huge issue with the wall myself, because there's always the risk of us not being able to leave should something happen here.
Well, that's what they're doing in cities in the UK. What they're doing is they're building these, what they call bypasses and roundabouts. And if you look at the way these motorways and things work, they're actually a very efficient way of boxing in a population. You only have to close relatively small regions or nodes or roundabouts, as we call them, or major road junctions. Right. And you've got people blocked in. So there are looks as if there are strategic plans, and of course here we got Agenda 21, Agenda 30, where they're going to depopulate the countryside. Again, it looks as if there's a mass plan to remove about 90% of us, one way or another, and control whatever's left. So whatever, I mean, already in London, certain parts of London have been divided off, streets closed, only 1 or 2 entrances. So the way that you're corralled all public housing in Britain has been earmarked for redevelopment, and the kind of tower blocks going up with they are so small. The retail business of people selling furniture and stuff aren't selling it because people's apartments can't take any of it. You've got these apartments are so small, people have to change outside in the corridor, and that's the kind of sort of boxing in of a population.
Well, what about the Grenfell? It was called the Grenfell
The
Towers?
Grenfell Tower was a satanic ritual, all planned. The gas pipes, the main gas valves for the primary big pipes that go up the building, the valves to cut them off had been concreted over, so they couldn't shut the gas off. So even after the thing had gone up, as the firemen went up, and there were something like 400 people at least completely incinerated in that building, they were actually in a structure where the gas was still coming up through the gas pipes, and he just hoped it didn't. And that's what the only safe part of it was the wind was blowing, so it wouldn't. So that was a real problem. They eventually did find the valves of the gas pipes had to dig up, and that was done with strategic planning years in advance.
So you're saying it was basically it became a crematorium for the people.
It was a crematorium. It was a ritual sacrifice of well, that's what they do. Yeah. And then the actual boxing of the area around, with the way the streets were done, and with the way that the police, there's a huge big, they were all used in this secondary ritual in plain sight. And that's when the Prime Minister at the time she didn't visit because she was very close to assassination, at least twice. So the pretty serious things are going on in plain sight. It's very clear that we've got, in open warfare, a non-human toxic weaponization in progress at the same time that authorities are literally trying to fight, knowing that the person beside them could be their enemy. This is really, really serious stuff, which would explain Trump and Boris's behavior, the way that they will make one thing and suddenly make decisions on another. Well, we're in open warfare right now.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is definitely a war for our consciousness, and people definitely need to wake up.
Our cognitive abilities.
Our cognitive abilities, our mind,
at the cognitive level.
Yeah, because that's our manifestation. Yeah. Well, what you put to manifest, and Tim Refat, boy, it would be great if he was here to kind of weigh in on this. But you spent so much time with him, Miles, you would know. You know, the key to manifestation, of course, is concentration.
Well,
it's emotion. It's emotion. It's your ability to focus and concentrate that emotion and intent, right? It's intention.
That's what Tim stands for. Total Intent Manifest.
Oh, how do you like that?
Okay, so he's actually Tony Stark. Tony Stark Refat. Now, Duncan's going over to see him in Vietnam. And they're doing a lot of business, and they're going to have, they're selling their rocks and their crystals and stuff like that. And he's coming up with a different type of religion. He's taking all the good bits of the religions, and so much of our religions, thanks to nefarious activities over the last early 2,000 years ago, we've been booby-trapped in a lot of that. The Notre Dame situation was some other force or other took that out. That was a mechanism based on technology involving certain aspects of, technology 2,000 years ago, which in Europe, a lot of these cathedrals were built around about AD 500. A lot of things happened then. The suppression of the divine feminine was released from that fire after the destruction of the attack on Notre Dame, which also coincided with an attack in Jerusalem on a mosque. Very important that those two happened together. And that was about releasing the divine feminine, which had been held down by that psychotronic device in Paris.
Oh my, look at that. That's amazing. What's the hope? What kind of hope do we have, Miles? Do you think humanity is going to get off their knees, as David Icke says, and start taking matters into our own hands? Because really we're
Well,
talking about a smaller percentage of people controlling the larger percentage of the world's population who are kept deliberately ignorant from those evil, really evil manipulation and harm.
Well, what we're doing is a lot of us are becoming more aware. The children coming through, these brave children coming through, know already. They're very smart. They're also on the front line of being attacked in schools to keep them dumb and keep them stupid.
Oh, yeah.
And chemically lobotomized effectively. Also, we've got all these frequencies which are attacking us. We are in a front line of consciousness in a weaponized war, and they're bringing every weapon they've got online. Right. I know a lot of so-called light workers, and the whole New Age light worker channeling thing is as a whole, again, distract people who are waking up and bring them in the wrong direction and get them all into all these channeling stuff, which they don't know what the hell they're dealing with, or astral travel and all that. You've got to be, you're going out into a battlefield there that you're just being wiped out. So we've got to be careful in that and how we deal with it.
I want to screen share an article here by Scientific American, which is actually the publication for the Sigma Psi Scientific Research Society, which actually I'm a member of. And this is an article about, mind control by cell phone. So exactly what you were saying before is that it's the same frequency that runs the cell phone, operates the cell phone. This is electromagnetic signals from cell phones can change your brain waves and behavior. But don't break out the aluminum foil head shield just yet. Now, you were talking to me, this says that cell phones cause insomnia as well. It says if cell phone signals boost a person's alpha waves, does this nudge them subliminally into an altered state of consciousness or have any effect at all on the workings of their mind? All you need to do is watch people crossing the street with their cell phones, with their heads into the palm of their hand. There's multiple videos, numerous videos on YouTube of people, watching their cell phone, walking off of, curbs, falling, walking into fountains and shopping malls, all kinds of things. So yeah, I would agree with that. And here's some more here. Hold on a second. So obviously hospitals and airplanes ban the use of these cell phones because it interferes with their electromagnetic transmissions. But what can we do now?
Well, actually, it wasn't
to protect
that.
ourselves.
The real reason they banned them is because when you fly, your phone starts accessing multiple cells. The whole point of the cell phone is it will only access maybe one or two cells. You'll be leaving one cell and moving into another, or possibly there'll be a third one. So that's why they don't want you to use your cell phone when you're flying, because everybody's cell phone is going to be accessing loads of cell phone towers all at the same time and screw the network up. It's not really anything to do with the airplane, but they're now, if you have everybody's cell phone on in an aluminium tube, it's going to, not be good for the electronics of the plane, really.
Right. And I'm also going to, what you were alluding to before is where this is all going. And this is going to this whole transhumanist agenda where you were saying they want to substitute organic life for inorganic life. And let's just look at this real quick. This is from someone who I have interviewed before on the GoldFish Report. Her name is Tiffany Fontenot, and she does reverse speech analysis. And she did reverse speech analysis on transhumanist Dr. James Giordano, who is, she refers to as a traitor to humanity. And so let's listen to what he has to say about this for a second.
And I mentioned the term transhumanism, and I think that in some circles the idea of transhumanism goes off on a tangent. The idea that humans are going to become something that is not human anymore, or perhaps the post-human. But there's still the term humanity in there. What is the essence of the human, and what does it mean to be transhuman? I think if we were to realistically take a look at that, what we would see is that the human is, in fact, a species in transition. The transhuman is that transitive species that is indeed evolving. we push back from the idea of the fallacy of the ephemeral that says we're not changing. We are. And more, we're becoming the architects or the engineers of that directive change. It's not simply reactive to those things that are an environment that then prompts changes in us by virtue of what we can survive, what we do to flourish. We're determining what those variables and factors are, and we're engineering those changes to ourselves as well as our environment so as to be able to prompt the directionality of that transition. We are a species in transition.
Okay, I would call him a traitor to humanity. What would you say? I mean, that's like, that's kind of like the Democrats trying to say there was an impeachable offense. And there wasn't.
Now, don't
right?
be silly. Democrats and impeachment. I mean, that's just silly. And we've got to talk something serious. Although exactly. I think it's important. I mean, if you look at also the 2045 agenda with the 2045.com and how they really see the humans as unnecessary and silly and stupid. I mean, who's made us like that? They have, the so-called scientists. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they want to transform us into existing only in a computer matrix. Mm-hmm. And but they have a problem with the brain because these 3D scientists don't understand that we're not 3D. So if you adopt a major transhumanization agenda to remove you from 3D into a computer, they haven't sorted out most of the basic concepts. But I mean, that should illustrate the transmigration of humans to cyborg, organic, metallized life forms. Mm-hmm. And actually, there's some people I know who are looking at things on the moon. Actually, they're sending some stuff back and they're talking about that kind of activity in the moon right now. But it's interesting that you have somebody of that caliber and that level talking publicly about this kind of thing in your face. And we should be paying really serious attention to what they're actually telling us.
Exactly. Well, let's look at this a little bit closer, because what she did was some reverse speech on this video, and I'm going to show you what she's revealed here. She says she took out a few statements. She looked through the whole thing. She has a reverse speech software, and this is what she wanted to share. So the forward speech says, and I mentioned the term transhumanism, and I think that in some circles, the idea of transhumanism goes off on a tangent. The reverse of that is, must snit me a villain. Now, there is a science, according to David Oates, who taught the CIA how to do the reverse speech analysis. That's also who taught Tiffany how to do it. This is what was being said. And I mentioned the term transhumanism, and I think that in some circles, the idea of transhumanism goes off on a tangent. Must snit me a villain. Okay, you can clearly hear that's what's being said in reverse. And her interpretation of this is coming across as an attempt at manipulation. Forward, he wants us to believe that the people who do not want forced transhumanism are the villains. So that is what is coming out in reverse. He wants to take the people who don't want to have forced robotization and make villains out of them. Snit is a word that shows up in reverse speech so much that it was included in the metaphor dictionary for reverse speech. In this case, it appears to mean to create or to make. Here's the second reversal. I'm going to play it. And I mentioned the term transhumanism, and I think that in some circles, the idea of transhumanism. Okay, so he's going to do the rest of it. And the reverse on that is, I aid the eye of the evil. Gotta listen. And I mentioned the term transhumanism, and I think that in some circles, the idea of transhumanism goes off on a tangent. Okay, so she plays it back in 3 different speeds so that you can hear it, you can catch it on one of them. And obviously it says what it says, I aid the eye of evil. In this particular usage for I have found that it is referring to the global Luciferian crime syndicate, and Giordano does appear to be aiding them. And one more reversal is in the same clip. Another reversal of this is, who's next in our force? Ill? And we'll listen to that. And I mentioned the term transhumanism, and I think that in some circles, the idea of transhumanism goes off on a tangent. Here she's saying that the non-consensual civilian targeting of forced robotization, torture, and assassination now happening to millions of civilians across the planet inducts tons of people each year to continue collecting experimental for their brain research that will assist the crime network to be able to dominate and control the population and exterminate or hostilely take over the ones who won't go along with their plans. This is exactly what you were saying, Miles. This is part of that 2030 agenda to control the remaining people that don't, succumb to whatever plans that they have to exterminate the 90%. And Dr. Giordano is very big on increasing this network of civilians remotely tied into computers as fast and as large as possible. So he's saying, who's our next victim to spread targeting to? So this is really nefarious, folks. You can go here and take a look for yourself at tiffvision.com, and you can take a look at her reverse speech analysis. And this is it's interesting because she is finding that most of the times when, as you said as well, Miles, this confirms what you're reporting, that almost all reversals on ETs, she has never found a positive one. And from the peoples whose speech she has selected, and we're usually talking about politicians, world leaders, CEOs of corporations, or celebrities. So I think that's pretty inclusive of the group that she has done reverse speech on, where she has found that those people are related to, or the reverse speech refers to, this transhumanist cult that she calls it, this agenda, and with negative entities involved in that as well, which is exactly confirming what you just said. Are you surprised that this comes up in the reverse speech, or
no,
are you?
I'm not surprised at all. Mm-hmm. I'm actually I'm not shocked, but we need to pay attention. We need to understand what we're dealing with, mm-hmm. and we need to know our enemy, because going up against mm-hmm. the enemy, once you notice there is some kind of an enemy, mm-hmm. going up ill-equipped is just charging at windmills. Mm-hmm. And exactly. That does not provide a solution. We've got to see who our friends are. We've got to see who our enemies are. And we've got to plot a strategy for survival out of this mess. And waking up in the incubation chamber with things stuck in your head as these children are being maintained in a consciousness level, so their abilities are boxed and used to create these false realities for our enemies. If we can do that, is so important. When I've heard about targeted individuals, first thing is, you're not targeted. You are now an empowered individual. As soon as you realize you're targeted, that means you've woken up. So quit the targeting. Quit saying I'm targeted and then crying about it. Okay, you've worked out that you're being targeted. That means you can attack back at the targeter. Mm-hmm. That's what you can do. You can, as an empowered individual, you can fight back. And all of those people who are pressing those buttons and going to work in the morning and saying goodbye to the kids in the morning and then going to work and then doing that targeting, mm-hmm. you're next. And all those corporations and all those companies setting up all these infrastructures to target and destroy the natural indigenous life in this world, they're next. This stuff will turn against you, and your crimes for the abominable things that you're doing in this world will be accounted for. There is nobody beyond the law anywhere, no matter where you are or what you think you might have, or how isolated, and how you can offset, not your carbon offset, but your karma offset. And they think they can do all that. All that's over now. Mm-hmm. And we have to, as I say, find out what's going on, plot a strategy, and then action it.
Okay, in our remaining minutes, I just wanted to also mention to folks, if you appreciate the time that we've provided tonight and the information we've provided, show your appreciation and help support the channel and also our guests tonight. You could go to thegoldfishreport.com and you could make a donation there, or you can do a super chat, which we've been kind of shying away from just because, you know, YouTube has been pretty impossible lately. Google has been very difficult in terms of getting paid.
Well, Google and YouTube on all this, they've got to realize that they're in the physical 3D world, and you've got to realize that if you screw with the laws of whatever's going on in this part of this universe, you know, you're going to be in trouble.
Oh yeah, my Facebook account, the Goldfish Report Facebook account, has been hacked, so we're not going to be able to post. I've been banned for 3 months for posting, and I don't even know why. And then now they won't even let me into my account. It's definitely, we're under attack. There's no question about it. We'll see. You know, we really need to come up with an alternative to Facebook. Yeah,
I've made my statement on that.
Yeah, I gotcha. We need to stop using it. Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to have to do.
Yeah. Exactly. We need to
write
stop using
letters.
it. But you know, the reality of it all is that we need to have, hi Doctor. Yeah, I have so many guests. So many people have come by to say hello to you, Miles. There's been so many wonderful comments in the comment section. And when I send you the link, Miles, you'll be able to see all the different comments people are making. And I see all these wonderful people who are very happy to see you and saying hello. And yes, Dr. Arden, thank you so much. And a lot of other wonderful people, Doug, Dave, and all these, and Jeanette, and of course, Barbara, thank you for all of your great comments. So, because this was a live chat as well. And, you know, one of the ways, and there's Sherry, she had to post her hello. She's our best. She's such a wonderful person. She's such a, you know, a really great, loyal, supporter of the channel. And these are people who know Miles and know the BASIS project, and they know the kind of quality and kind of research and information that goes into this. And I have to tell you, I mean, we really struggle to get the information out. We struggle. As you can see, we've been, Miles, I mean, you've been attacked numerous times as well. You've had your accounts, interfered with. And I know that you've had some problems with Facebook as well. Right now, we're completely off of Facebook at the moment. I don't know when we're going to be back.
Well, actually, just if we didn't have YouTube, we couldn't be having this conversation. So let's just say thank you to YouTube, thank you to Facebook for getting us to do something in the first place. So, I mean, okay, we've had that opportunity. Okay, and okay, things are getting sticky, but you know, we're still having this conversation. So in some regards, you know, some guys at YouTube were putting all that technology in so we can have this kind of conversation. It's a good thing. So, you know, don't let's bite the hand that's feeding us too much. But at the same time, you know, we've got to shout out and make sure our voices can be heard and they're not taken down.
I agree. And, you know, my point was that in my original channel with my first 200 reports are gone. It was suspended definitely. So it's, indefinitely. So,
well, Louisa, that could happen to any of us. So anybody who sees anything on YouTube or anything on the internet, don't think it's going to be there tomorrow. Download it, save it. Put it onto something which is off your computer, because I've seen a whole directory, which happened to be from a previous radio station, that whole 50 shows or something, I just saw it drifting across the screen and being deleted instantly.
No, I'm not saying I don't have. Yeah, I'm not saying I don't have the backups to it. I do, but it's a tremendous amount of time to upload 200 reports on another station channel when I'm still trying to produce the ones I'm doing now. So it's really cumbersome and time consuming. It's really, there's no reason for them to have deleted the channel and not restored it. And of course, our blogs were deleted and not restored as well. So essentially, what we had to do was start all over again. But I understand what you're saying. We're trying to get this information out, well,
the only
it's very difficult when
we've got some really pretty smart kids out there, and the only way we're going to get through this is we develop an independent transmission and communication system.
Yes.
We've got some smart kids. It's got to have to be in hyperspace.
Yeah.
It's got to be protected, secure, and somebody out there, kiddies, get working on it and do it. No matter how much pizza you have to eat to develop this kind of thing, which we all know computer geeks eat lots of pizza.
Well, I have to also say we are simulcasting on Ascension Radio, and this is actually born out of just what you're saying, Miles, that Ascension Radio is its own platform controlled by Ascension Radio, and they store their own archives and their own protected mediums. So, no matter how much they go down, they try to take us down, we still have to keep moving. We still have to keep going. So Ascension Radio is actually a very good example of this. And that's one of the reasons why we're simulcasting on Ascension Radio, formerly Wolf Spirit Radio, by the way, is to keep that milieu of communication open and to keep people informed. So,
well, something just I don't know what our time is, but something that people should understand is packet radio was the thing before the internet. Mm-hmm. That's where radio amateurs transmitted digital beep beep beeps and bop bop bops on shortwave radio. Or packet radio without going into the frequencies. Right. But that was a way of transmitting bulletin boards and all sorts of text information using radio ham technology. And really, I think we might have to go back to something like that. And people should be developing a means of transmission like that. That means you've got to have licenses for your things and all that.
Yeah, we have to go back to analog. We have to go onto a medium that they don't communicate on. Absolutely. And let's not forget that, of course, Ascension Radio doesn't rely on Facebook or YouTube either. So that's why it's really good to try to build these platforms and still have access. And, Miles, you might want to consider doing a spot on Ascension Radio yourself because, we are building, GoldFish Report has teamed up with Ascension Radio to help launch it. It is new. And like we said, it is formerly the Wolf Spirit Radio. And that's how we have to do it. But we have to keep the communication going. And, we're really pleased to have you. I'm really grateful for your time, Miles. And it's always a pleasure to have you on the GoldFish Report. Let me just ask Audrey Ewis if he had any questions or comments that you had to anything in closing. I know we're going over time a little because we did start a little bit late, so we'll just go over a little bit if Miles has that time to do that.
Well, I'm thebasisproject.org, and my donations are basically at thebasisproject.org/donate. And it's been one or two people have really helped in the last few months to really keep myself going, and it's really a big deal.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. I've got my Mac for sale, but nobody wants it.
Well, what we have to do is support the channel. Miles was generous with his time tonight, and if you appreciate the kind of reports that we present, and if it in some way helps you and helps sort things out in your life, please show us your appreciation by supporting the channel. Go to I put Miles' link in the
my
live
email
chat, the live chat rather, and I'm also putting, hold on a second, I'm also putting the radio.mpac.org link in here as well. So if people want to I'm sorry, if you want to donate there, you can go there as well. And of course, the goldfishreport.com. And I just want to say a shout out to all of our Patreons that we are very grateful for your service. That we're grateful for your support because it helps cover the expenses of some of these reports and helping us to archive them as well. So thank you immensely to our Patreons who we couldn't do this without you. So go ahead, Miles.
Well, Louisa, you're doing a hell of a good job. I support you. I didn't realize you've been through hell. I've seen other good people. I don't know if Red Ice are still with us. I know Dark Journalist took a hit. Red Ice Productions, I think they were taken down. I don't know, but we've got to figure out what's going on, find out what's going on, somehow talk off the telephone or off the existing network. But also, I would suggest if there's any, I know that there's some friends here developing a cold steam Tesla generator where a patent was split into two, so that it produce electrical power. And also, while I'm mentioning that, there's a company called SEPCO in Thailand, and they are producing 25,000 liters of biofuel from plastic every day with one of their machines. And those kind of just abilities to recycle plastics, closed cycle, no emissions except biofuel at the end. Those are the sort of thing I'm sort of talking to people about. So those are positive solutions in the real world about helping things.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you're mentioning positive solutions, because that's really what people want to know. They don't all have the answers, and we don't either. But as we said, you have to find those stations and realize how valuable it is, and not be linked into this plasma interface that keeps us, connected through the chemtrails and the nanobots. It keeps us connected to the plasma interface in our devices, and it's really going to hijack us. And I don't know, is there a switch that's going to go off with this 5G, and then we're all going to get like fried? Is that what they're going to do, Miles?
Well, I think what's happening is that it's going to be severely limited. I don't think they've actually, a lot of the wish list that they want on it ain't going to work. They don't have the technology to make it work. So I think in some respects 5G could be going off with a bit of a damp squid or squib, and it could be not just the big thing that they're hoping it's going to be, but it's going to creep up on us. A lot of this sort of stuff doesn't start really kicking in for maybe 3 or 4 years. So when they say there is rumors that there's an ambulance in London was running 5G, and every nurse that's worked in it, or that's 3 nurses who worked in that ambulance, have all died. But these kind of stories aren't necessarily helpful. So why am I saying them? So we just got to be careful what level of 5G is being transmitted. So when people then don't get affected by it, they can claim, oh, 5G is okay. But that's because the really high frequency, 25 gigahertz, 100 gigahertz, 300 gigahertz, these really high frequencies at powers which are only a few feet from your window or on every lamppost and on every car, that isn't implemented yet. But if they do, I mean, that's really dangerous stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're leading us right to the slaughterhouse, and we're just allowing them to do it because we're not educating ourselves, we're not informing ourselves. But with these kinds of reports, we are, and then we can make safe choices and learn how to protect ourselves. There is so much information to go over, Miles, and we couldn't do it in one interview. So I hope you'll come back. And
yes, I would, but I think we've got to start nailing the regulators. FCC, what the hell are you doing about this? Why are you licensing and officially sanctioning frequencies which kill? Ofcom in the UK, why are you doing this? You know this technology kills, you know it's harmful. Why are you licensing the people who can do that on the lamppost outside your door? Yeah. Why are you doing that? And what's the IEE? These are the Institute of Electrical Engineers and the IEEE. Why are they doing this? What have they done? Those people are in the public domain. They need to be hammered with questions in a civilized way. Why are you doing this to us? Why are you telling that manager who puts those installation engineers out on the street to put these things up, these LED lights and so forth, which have got warning stickers on them, which are dangerous to your site? Why are you doing that? You're paid every day. You're sending these people out in the van to install this technology. And when they go and put that helmet on and with their health and safety goggles on, they're doing that, yet they're going to install a technology which is going to fry their own brains and kill their own children.
Right.
Why are you doing that?
Well, that's a very good question, because isn't it affecting them as well?
Exactly.
You got it. It's really, it's mind-boggling. It's like you just can't even wrap your mind around it. It's very hard to understand. But you would think that with the chemtrails, the people who are responsible for them are breathing it themselves, but apparently they're immune to it. Let me just also say that, on Ascension Radio, one of the things about the platform that's good is that they do archive all of the reports. You can listen to it again. And it's also good for people to make copies to their own mediums and broadcasts and make it invisible to censorship. So he's making a new section. Audrey Ewis is making a new section in his forums just for the GoldFish Report, and you can find that there. And of course, Audrey's a very interesting person too. I would not say he's a negative one. I would say he's more positive, than I have seen, and certainly it doesn't have the agenda to do any harm to humanity. As you all know, Audrey's story of coming here and crash landing in his craft and staying here for a very long period of time. We also know about Val Thorne, of other positive off-worlders who have tried to come and tried to help our government with responsible use. We all know about they first arrived after we started our first nuclear bomb, and that this was not going to be acceptable because this would have repercussions out in the cosmos.
And that's what happened at Rendlesham Forest at the nuclear weapons site there. All the weapons were neutralized from active radioactive weapons grade radioactive elements down to iron. And the same happened to the Russians. So somebody did a good thing. That was Rendlesham Forest UFO events 1980.
Okay. Well, so I just wanted to start winding down this this interview, and I want to thank all the people who have joined us for the live chat, and also for the viewers who are watching in the live stream. And I certainly do hope that that Miles will come back. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Miles. I do appreciate especially on this topic. Well, on so many topics you're so knowledgeable on, and this one is really your ballpark, where you're the expert on and knowledgeable, and have that background on the electrical aspects of
well, Louisa and Ascension Radio, and Audrey. It's not Audrey with a U, it's Audrey. Audrey
with an A.
Putting all that together. It's really good work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
But I have to say, when you see your first scuttler, big spider crab, about a foot wide, crawling on top of your technology on something that should have 7,000 volts on it, and it just creeps away and disappears. That was a big. That's what you call a learning curve.
Well, I saw a video on YouTube. It was really freaky. I was like, "What?" I was like, "Is this for real?" I did see a video of it, and it was the legs were as long as a 10-story apartment building. I mean, this thing was huge.
Yeah, well, that's what Julie Phelps is talking about. And in the Lake District in northwest England, there's a big nest of those very intelligent, non-hostile beings deep underground.
Oh my God!
I was told about that 15 years ago.
This was in Russia, I think. Something.
No,
like
this
that.
is in England. Well, this.
The one, I think the video I saw was a Russian one, but I can't be 100% sure.
Yeah.
Well, look, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We've got to go. And this has been a very interesting interview. Very good night. It is Super Bowl Sunday, so I think a lot of our crowd is busy watching that tonight. So I didn't realize that when I scheduled this interview. I probably would have moved the time.
I used to do that, Sky TV, bring it over.
Yeah, you did. So we'll do this again, and we hope that the viewers will go and support, and the viewers who are going to listen to this after the live stream, because this is going to be posted to the YouTube channel. So anyone who does after the Super Bowl come and listen to this wonderful interview, please, if you appreciate what we're presenting to you and the information, show your support and go to these. I'm going to post the links to everybody's channel and to Miles, to the Basis Project. Miles is a legend. He's done so much incredible work over the years, whistleblower work, informing us, helping humanity. Really, he's a good soul. Do what you can to help support the people on the GoldFish Report, the guests, and of course our associates like the Ascension Radio. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to just tell you all, have a great weekend. And when we get more information, we'll definitely present it. We'll be back to present it, because we definitely want to figure out some solutions to all of these problems as well. And I don't know, or you were talking about an Oregon bubble. There were things like that, Miles, and
I've made one. Makes a big difference. Again, that was something that was discovered by a Basis interviewer. This Oregon pyramid thing happened to have a Tesla coil working right beside it. The energy field built up, and two Greys, which were in the room with them, couldn't stand it, and they had to get out.
Awesome.
So that's what that electric field does.
Well, why don't we talk about that next time? Because that's going to be the solution. So we can talk about how to make these. Why don't we talk about how to make these? And this might be a really good idea for
YouTube
people.
video. You just need cement, sticky back plastic, and some crystals. You've got to have your sticky back plastic, okay?
Okay. All right. Well, that's wonderful. The goldfish bowl. Yeah, I would rather have the goldfish bowl too. Super Bowl, goldfish bowl. That's really cute. Thanks, Doug. That was very cute. Well, everybody, you have a great night. And I just want to, again, thank you all for joining us. And you've had wonderful comments in the comment section. So thank you so much. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Thanks for joining us. And for those of you who are live with us on Ascension Radio, we do appreciate you listening and being with us. I'm sorry you weren't able to see the visuals on the screen, but I think you get the whole point that we need to do something, and we're all responsible here. There's nobody that's going to save us. I'm sorry. I love Jesus too, but I don't think that's what's going to happen here. I think we need to do it ourselves. So let's all take responsibility, personal responsibility, and let's stand up to these globalists and tell them no. And we want to live in peace, and we don't want to be cyborgs. So if you want to be a cyborg, well, go right ahead. But I don't think most of us want to be. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us, and good night.